Before there were algorithms, there were minds that dreamed without machines. Before code, there was curiosity, the original engine of creation. And long before technology defined intelligence, life itself had already mastered it. We often speak of a future ruled by artificial thought, yet we forget. The world has already seen intelligence in 1,000 forms, born in stone, in stars, in silence. The story of intelligence didn't begin in a laboratory. It began in the firelight of forgotten worlds, with hands trembling against cave walls, with questions that had no answers, and with dreams so ancient they became our blueprint for every machine we would ever build. This is not a story about invention. It's a story about memory, and how the universe taught itself to think long before humans gave it a name. The first code was not written, it was lit. Somewhere in the darkness of prehistory, a spark leapt from stone to straw, and the world changed. That moment, when humanity tamed fire, was the first great leap toward understanding power. It wasn't just survival. It was the realization that nature could be shaped by thought. Every flicker of flame was a line of information. It taught us cause and effect, control and chaos. It burned fear into knowledge, and knowledge into ambition. Around the fire, minds evolved. Stories were born. And from stories came imagination, the most mysterious intelligence of all. Fire became the first teacher. It consumed, transformed, illuminated. It was both creation and destruction, a paradox humanity still hasn't mastered. And as the flames danced across cave walls, shadows formed the first moving images. Our ancestors' earliest version of storytelling. The beginning of everything that would follow. Long before writing, there were whispers carved in stone. Marks, spirals, patterns that seemed meaningless, until we realized they weren't. Across continents, ancient humans were thinking the same thought in different languages, of shape and color. They were trying to capture the invisible, to give thought a body. These cave paintings were not decoration. They were data, emotional data. Each stroke recorded hunger, hope, worship, fear. And then came language, not from silence, but from rhythm. The beating heart became a drum. The drum became a word, and words became worlds. Every word spoken since carries the DNA of that first moment. The urge to make sense of the mystery. The power to describe reality was the power to shape it. Once we named the stars, they belonged to us. Once we named ourselves, we became aware that we existed. Civilization was built upon a single realization. Knowledge could be passed on. From Sumer to Egypt, from Indus to the Andes, humans began recording time, mapping stars, and designing order. They built calendars from shadows and geometry from dreams. The pyramids, Stonehenge, and the ziggurats were not monuments of pride. They were equations written in stone. We often look at these structures and wonder, how did they do it? The better question might be, what were they trying to remember? Perhaps intelligence is not about progress, but preservation. Each generation trying to keep the light alive before darkness returns. In these ancient observatories, humans studied the patterns of heaven and saw something divine in their repetition. It was the first moment we began to understand the language of the universe. Thousands of years before modern computers, humans were already building devices that could think in numbers. In Greece, the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient gear-driven calculator, predicted eclipses, planetary motion, and even the timing of sacred games. Its creators were not primitive. They were engineers of the invisible, architects of logic hidden within metal. And while the mechanism rusted at the bottom of the sea, the minds that made it left behind an inheritance. The understanding that thought could live inside matter. That same principle lives inside every device we hold today. Not new, merely rediscovered. Across centuries, humanity kept repeating the same whisper. We can make intelligence tangible. From abacuses to astrolabes, from orreries to telescopes, every instrument was a fragment of one question. How do we measure what cannot be seen? Every age had its prophets of progress. Men and women who saw too far ahead and paid the price. They weren't magicians. They were misunderstood scientists. Inventors haunted by ideas the world wasn't ready for. In the 19th century, Ada Lovelace imagined a machine that could translate numbers into art, music, and thought. She saw creativity within computation, a century before modern computers existed. They called her delusional. Today, we call her a visionary. Then came Nikola Tesla, who dreamed of wireless energy, electric storms, and global power transfer. He described ideas that would become reality long after his death. He died alone. But his mind lit the path we now walk. And there were others, forgotten mathematicians, astronomers, healers, philosophers. People who decoded pieces of the universe long before their discoveries were claimed by history. Their stories remind us that human intelligence is cyclical. Every few generations, we rediscover what our ancestors already knew. Every act of intelligence follows a pattern: observation, imitation, creation, reflection. That pattern didn't start with technology. It started with life itself. The way birds build nests, ants design colonies, spiders weave perfect geometry. Nature was the first engineer. Humans only learned to translate those instincts into invention. We copied the flight of birds to create wings, the precision of shells to craft architecture, the rhythm of the tides to measure time. Nature was the original teacher. Its lessons encoded in every living cell. Perhaps intelligence doesn't belong to humans at all. Perhaps it flows through everything that has ever adapted, survived, or dreamed. Long before fiber optics, there were whispers between trees. The mycelium networks beneath forests, invisible threads connecting roots, allow plants to share resources, warnings, even survival strategies. It is nature's own internet. Before humans mapped the web, the Earth had already built one. Before we spoke in data, the planet was already speaking in life. These living connections remind us that intelligence doesn't require machines. It only requires relationship. One part learning from another. And if that's true, then every living thing is part of an ancient conversation that never stopped. We just learned how to listen. The Renaissance wasn't just a period of art. It was a rebirth of thought. For the first time, humanity began studying itself. Anatomy, emotion, philosophy. The human mind became both subject and tool. Leonardo da Vinci drew machines that could fly and dissected the workings of the heart, seeing no boundary between imagination and mechanism. Galileo aimed his telescope at the heavens and shattered humanity's illusion of centrality. These were not just inventors. They were explorers of perception, proving that intelligence is infinite when combined with curiosity. And yet, every revelation led to new questions. Who are we? Why do we create? Are we the universe, trying to understand itself? By the 20th century, humanity's thoughts became visible as machines. Calculating engines, punch cards, early code. The language of zeros and ones emerged, the binary heartbeat of modern civilization. But behind every code was still a mind that dreamed it. When the first computers were built, they were mirrors. reflecting humanity's desire to simplify the infinite. Logic became the new God, and data the new prayer. We believed we were making progress, but in truth, we were only translating the oldest instinct of all, to preserve memory. The more complex our tools became, the further we drifted from remembering why we built them. Technology was never meant to replace thought. It was meant to amplify it. Every generation believes it's the first to awaken, but the truth is older than all of us. Humanity has always been intelligent. Long before wires, chips, and networks, we were decoding stars while the Earth was still cooling. We were dreaming before we could even write. The phrase artificial intelligence may be new, but the phenomenon of creation is ancient. Every fire, every symbol, every story was a form of thinking, and every invention since is merely an echo of that first spark. We did it first, not because we built machines that can think, but because we learned that thinking itself is the most sacred form of creation. And maybe that's the secret history buried beneath every discovery. That what we call progress is simply the universe remembering itself through us. What if intelligence didn't begin with humans, and it won't end with them either? What if we are only one chapter in a cosmic story, a story of consciousness that keeps reinventing itself through biology, through stone, through metal, through time? Maybe one day, the future will look back and say, they did it first. Long before technology, long before algorithms, long before machines learned to mimic thought. Because long before any of this existed, the spark was already burning in us.